This program, we first need to talk about the Hong Kong stock market. Today, we see that the Hang Seng Index has stabilized after some fluctuations, rising by 146 points to 23,127 points. The trading volume has improved, with over 210 billion in transactions today. Here are the top 10 transactions for your review. Let's take a closer look at the first one on the list, which is the Hang Seng Fund, priced at 24.06 cents, showing an increase of 1.8 cents. Another notable exchange-traded fund, ETF, is the Hang Seng China Enterprises, currently valued at 891.6 cents. It's quite impressive and noteworthy that several ETFs have made it to the top of the list, particularly this one. While major ETFs are attracting substantial investments, this influx does not guarantee ongoing optimism in the Hong Kong stock market or offer clear directional guidance. But usually, a lot of money comes in, and this money usually doesn't buy stocks. They don't know what to buy, so they just buy the market. So ETF will be one of their options. I think these revelations are worth paying attention to. The third place goes to Xiaomi, $54, 4.5 cents. It is one of the relatively few stocks that fell today. It also fell, and it fell 3.5 cents. Hey, Tencent, 520.5, increased by 3.5. It's back today, and it's also a 3-day high. Hey, let's count. Only Lingguang, it continues to be unstoppable. Today, it increased by 10,337. The 4 Series increased by 31 and 2. And CATL, wow, it's actually very sharp today. But you have to pay attention to this because David has already issued a warning. In fact, the number of circulating shares of this stock is very small. I have calculated a number, and the number of circulating shares is actually about 3%. But from the perspective of speculating in new stocks are speculated on supply and demand. You just go for it because the circulation volume is small. The current stock price is indicated, simply connect it. But if you continue to go online and pay a lot, you can refer to the A shares because the shares are very difficult to leave in the end, which is the basic factor. Let's follow another one, which is an electric vehicle concept stock or a competitor of CATL, namely BYD shares, which hit a new high again today, 462.6, up 18 yuan, a growth rate of 4%. Alibaba's stock price, which had dropped to around $110, has gradually recovered following its report of over 400,000 earnings. It's 380. The atmosphere of Hong Kong stocks is good today. The rebound is just 3%, 391 plus 6 plus 12 plus 4. Actually, it got a little anxious after the market closed. It got a little high, but it has only rebounded a little. Hey, its previous high was 392, reached in October of last year. Today, it has once again hit that high of 392. These specific positions are referred to as close highs. Let's observe closely to see if it forms a double top pattern and subsequently falls back. There will undoubtedly be a significant breakthrough in the near future. The ninth place is Southern Hang Seng Technology with 5.233 million yuan. Meituan is 137 yuan, and the third place is 9 yuan. Meituan is relying on the rebound to stabilize a little. Today's overall market release is actually looking quite positive. If you ask me, let's first discuss the US stock market. You can observe that the US stock market experienced some pullback during the overnight trading session. But before that, you saw the S&P 500 index rise for 7 consecutive trading days. Well, yes, in fact, we have observed that the funds are gradually returning to the market, albeit slowly and cautiously. To put it simply, my feeling is that the overall risk position of the market is currently very high and precarious. Therefore, we must seize this opportunity while we can. The entire market is experiencing a state of panic and uncertainty. There are ongoing discussions and concerns about an impending trade war and a potential tariff war. In short, the situation remains quite volatile and demands our attention. Everyone seems to be very unhappy with the current situation. This sentiment clearly reflects the broader investment market conditions. However, we can now observe that the overall market atmosphere has shifted. In fact, I believe a great many events have occurred in the US stock market since the beginning of the year, essentially since Trump took office and implemented various policies.
There are new policies and measures every day, and then on April 2nd, it's called Liberation Day, and it really feels like the day of liberation for all stocks. That's it. So in fact, you can see that the various risks associated with the primary market have noticeably increased since the beginning of this year. Additionally, we have undergone extensive training. After that, the US stock market also had a big correction since the beginning of the year, and it has risen recently for a few trading days. It is quite proud to see that even though the credit rating of the US stock market was downgraded, the market may react very quickly. In fact, we saw that the decline narrowed immediately this evening. So actually, of course, there are many other big banks or central banks that spoke immediately. In fact, there is no problem with the downgrade of the US rating. Basically, it is difficult for you to find such a good liquid asset. The US dollar-denominated asset can be replaced in the short term. So actually, I think the market is now seeing that the tariff war is gradually starting to improve, or some negotiation results are actually good. The most important thing is that both China and the United States are beginning to make progress. So actually, the market atmosphere has basically recovered a lot from the low level. However, one crucial thing that everyone should pay close attention to is that the current version of the tariff remains suspended for a total of 90 days. But what will actually unfold or transpire once those 90 days come to an end? Will there be some new measures suddenly appearing?
This is what we call the short-term entry in 2 or 3 months. Everyone should pay attention to the time point when the market may react. This is really something you have to watch. It's the same thing as what I mentioned. That is, if the United States downgrades again, it means that the purpose is to downgrade it. That's what they said. In fact, none of the 3 major rating agencies assigned the highest possible rating, which I find somewhat surprising. The reality is that despite this situation, the investment market has not adequately reflected or responded to this underlying problem. Is there truly no reaction occurring at all, or is there just silence?
I believe that something significantly more important than this particular issue has essentially occurred since the beginning of the year, and it has already been factored into market expectations. For instance, there is ongoing discussion about the potential for a U.S. economic recession, a topic that has been prevalent and concerning for a few years now among analysts and economists. At the very least, credit ratings are connected to the economy to a certain extent. Additionally, I believe that fundamentally 2 major rating agencies had previously downgraded the credit rating. This time, however, it's only one of those agencies. In fact, many analysts have speculated about whether the last remaining one will follow suit. To some extent, I believe the market's reaction this time was quicker than I anticipated in processing this news, which indicates that, in fact, we can confidently say that pricing is indeed a significant factor, yes.
In theory, when a situation that could be considered relatively dangerous occurs, or when people start to feel concerned or anxious, your sentiment regarding risk aversion tends to increase significantly. However, at this moment, we all seem to agree that the overall market atmosphere is somewhat optimistic, and consequently, the ability of investors to digest and process negative news is also considerably higher than before. We have all seen that the gold price has fallen quite sharply before. You would think that the way the gold price has fallen recently is a further reflection of the risk aversion sentiment in the market. But the gold price has risen again in the past 2 days. How do you assess the market sentiment?
I am very happy this time. If you look at the gold price, it has been since the beginning of the year, before the tariff war. In fact, I have some information from the beginning of the year to date. If you go to April 4, as he said, it is important to note that after the tariff war, the market actually fell on both Thursday and Friday. The gold sector has notably outperformed others since the start of the year, showing a rise of 15.7% by April 4. In contrast, technology stocks have experienced disappointing performance during the same period. Tesla fell 40p. Nvidia's stock has risen by 30%, while Bitcoin has actually decreased by 10%. So you can see that the traditional risk aversion sentiment is very obvious from the beginning of the year to the start of the tariff war, but it has become very positive after the tariff war. You can see that gold actually has no negative return, but the appreciation is not that much. It has likely increased by approximately 7%, but Bitcoin has surged very rapidly since the onset of the tariff war, attracting significant attention. However, in reality, this time we genuinely believe that in the past we consistently referred to Bitcoin as a reliable digital safe haven asset. This time it will be transferred back and it will achieve this function.
Well, when looking closely at the actual returns, they are all quite generous, but it is also a little thrilling. Well, you are actually quite proud of being a safe haven. How would you personally define and assess the level of risk associated with your investment? Theoretically, it is volatility. Its volatility is actually very high, so theoretically its risk is high. But it is one of our traditional safe haven assets, and its volatility is actually not small at all. You have gold and US dollars. Yes, you do. Do you consider them as safe haven assets? They have always been considered as such, right? Yes, I understand that for all of you, the volatility in the market is quite large and pronounced. For the sake of simplicity in our discussion, it seems that this is the central question we are focusing on. However, what I truly want to ask is whether the indicators and effects of the several safe haven assets I mentioned earlier appear to have diminished or become less significant in their impact now. Because we can't sort out the hey for now because it's a recent thing. However, it appears that traditional safe haven assets are unable to accurately indicate the current risk rate system of the market. Do we really need to keep an eye on beacon so that we can know the risk level of the market first? In fact, even the indicator function of beacon serves merely as a reference point, doesn't it?
I think that although Bitcoin has this hedging function this time, I am not very proud of its use. It may be its nature now. Some people think it is a safe haven asset, yes. However, there are also individuals who choose to transform it into a high-risk investment opportunity. I am concerned that there was a previous issue that had a very strong correlation with chestnut prices. Indeed, there are numerous risky assets and volatile high-risk technology stocks on the market today. So actually, because it has become quite normal now, its tendency should typically exhibit some safe haven effect. However, currently, the market has somewhat mixed those signals. Well, if you talk about traditional terms, in addition to gold, there have been data before that the Swiss franc is one of the safe haven assets. Well, we usually talked more about yen in Asia before, but in the global world, the Swiss franc is a traditional safe haven asset. And when gold appreciates sharply, the Swiss franc actually appreciates very well.
When gold appreciates well, the Swiss franc appreciates well, which is when traditional risk aversion sentiment is high. But Bitcoin, whether Bitcoin will or not is because when we look at Bitcoin, in fact, its quotation comes from US dollars. If your US dollar depreciates, it is very difficult for it not to depreciate. Even though the dollar has fallen, the price of his stocks has gone up. Could it be that this factor has made him see the safe haven effect as a minor factor?
Well, but this is because of it and the US dollar. Last year, the data told everyone that when the US dollar appreciated, Bitcoin kept appreciating. So it seems that neither the correlation nor the negative correlation exists. We discovered that in reality, the behavior of BQ, whether concerning the US dollar or the US dollar index, which can be viewed as distinct financial indicators, shows that, for example, when comparing BQ to traditional safe haven assets like gold, there is a noticeable lack of correlation between them. But if we look at it from a long-term perspective, the same correlation exists, which is how much M2 there is in the world. Yes, if we keep it in mind, it is the money supply. That's right, when the money supply is high, the price of Bitcoin will actually rise. When discussing this particular topic, it is important to note that we have made efforts to utilize a variety of different methods and approaches for making comparisons. Specifically, we have identified a correlation between the data, whether it pertains to short-term trends or long-term patterns. But just mentioned, if you use US dollars to calculate, when the US dollar keeps appreciating last year, Bitcoin actually keeps appreciating. But this year when it fell, Bitcoin also rose since the beginning of the year. So actually the correlations you see don't really exist.
Certainly. Here's the expanded version of your text. Well, that's it. I quickly found a BQ chart, and wow, it looks like this familiar pattern we all recognize features several triple tops. Generally speaking, triple tops are interpreted to indicate that the likelihood of breaking through the upper resistance is greater compared to the more common double top pattern, which suggests a different market sentiment. He has a genuine opportunity to succeed. While reaching the mountain's peak is straightforward, it's also simple to retreat back down. Technically, he can achieve this. However, if there is absolutely nothing at the very top of the mountain, it will become quite troublesome for you, as you may find yourself deeply hurt emotionally. Oh, it's really about 15 or 16. Do you think there is a genuine chance of setting a new record this time? I just completely rely on grace to come through for us. Honestly, I believe the probability of achieving a new record is quite substantial. It's certainly better than what my dear master achieved previously. In fact, we had just planned everything out right before the show started. Interestingly, the new record was actually set recently, adding even more excitement to the event.
If the number is 109,300, you should consider rounding it up to 109,500. In fact, that amount is quite significant. Now let's discuss 2%, which represent more or less. If you look at Bitcoin in the past few days, it has suddenly increased by 3 or 4%. This has happened before. Instead of talking about the past now, it would be better to turn around and talk about what good thing suddenly happened. The tariff conflict between China and the US is improving. The global investment climate is favorable. But if you put aside the essence and look at it, there will be a Bitcoin conference from May 27th to May 29th. Last year, Trump attended the conference, and this year, J.D. Vance will come to speak. Well, another important thing to note is that I don't specifically remember if I mentioned this during my last appearance on the show, but in fact, many states across the United States have enacted various laws regarding how Bitcoin can be utilized as a strategic reserve asset for financial stability. Wow, it seems that Texas recently passed a significant proposal last month, or possibly the month before that. However, it did not receive a vote from the House of Representatives, which ultimately meant it was not signed into law. Recently, however, 2 states have officially signed new laws to enforce the regulations. So basically, there are actually 2 states that can legally make strategic reserves. So actually, there are still many people queuing up, waiting to vote, waiting to be passed by the House of Representatives, waiting to be signed into law. Now, there are 2 of them. Actually, in the United States, as everyone knows, usually one state passes another state as an example, and then it goes on like this. While there is currently no new money available, the US can still create strategic reserves as per the executive order signed by Trump. This suggests that acquiring new funds in the future is feasible despite the present limitations. The newly established initiative now focuses on the state's strategic reserve. Additionally, we monitor several publicly listed companies closely. For instance, Share is consistently in the process of raising funds, and similarly, Asia Magic Planet is also actively seeking to raise capital. These entities are part of a larger group that we refer to as institutional investors, which play a critical role in the market landscape. Listed companies, in fact, all keep in mind that there is continuous inflow of new funds into Bitcoin.
Well, these are the short-term catalysts, all of which belong to... But of course, it is a trend that you put some of the weekly reserves into reserve. This may be more medium-term, that is, if you have some short-term starting agents, you can look for them. In fact, it can be predicted. However, I consistently find myself feeling anxious. Typically, whenever I examine an asset, my first step is to analyze the OSI to determine if it might decline to an overbought level. I am incredibly proud of this achievement. Reflecting on the past, when the market reached certain overbought levels, I observed through various data and images that these conditions didn't necessarily indicate a decline. Instead, it appears that they often trigger a significant revelation effect, leading to unexpected positive movements. Do you think the reason why ROC is fond of me is similar to the appeal of Bitcoin? Everyone is aware of its finite supply. As time progresses, that supply will diminish further and further, or it may become increasingly concentrated in fewer hands. I fear this could be beneficial, as it creates a hedging effect against market fluctuations. There are some disputes in Canada and the United States. There are more and more countries and more funds in the world. When the channels are used as reserves, hedging, or balancing assets, their supply is becoming more and more volatile. This may make it impossible for our technical factors to reflect the price immediately.
Yes, because if the technical factors are really in the past, then if you look at it as a stock, it would be relatively more appropriate. But the most special thing about the first Bitcoin is that it has a limited supply that is only 21 million pieces, and there will be no more. In essence, there are numerous significant institutions operating in the market today, and these entities actively have buyers, indicating that there is indeed a noticeable level of demand within the channel. However, in turn, their new supply is diminishing more and more. So on the one hand, we have witnessed similar trends, such as the changes observed in Google search functionalities and results. The higher it reaches, the more people will watch it. This is the case that many times we see it go up to 70,000 and now to 100,000. In fact, looking at the data, it is not just retail investors who buy it. Most of them are institutional investors who started to enter the market at 70,000, which led to the 100,000 level. So, for example, what we always say is that everyone is waiting for the bottom of 70,000 or so. Now you are watching the show like this. In fact, no one should have the courage to buy at that time, which means that everyone is watching very negative news. Just to say, I don't know how long the tariff war will last. Hey, and then it seems like the market is heading towards a red market. These words will appear. It is not that easy. If you are brave enough, just enter the market. It is better to write a system.
Hey there, viewers who have been following the show closely. If you happen to have any questions or curiosities about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, US stocks, or even stocks from Hong Kong, please feel free to leave a message so we can engage in an interesting discussion together. A friend curiously asked why Ashasha suddenly disappeared without any notice. Perhaps it's because everyone else is currently missing. The reason for their absence is that they all have holidays today, enjoying some time off. They are expected to return next week. Therefore, we decided to invite Quincy to be our guest for today. Certainly, Quincy, I truly hope to visit him frequently and enjoy our time together. Interestingly, Winnie Shah discovered that everyone who visits him is all searching for height.
Yes, it happens every time. You're nearly ready to sing a new song again.
Last time we made an appointment with her, we were still talking. This time it's her. April asked me. This time it's not her. She was so far away from the new song that she came back after a while. Well, this is a little bit surprising, actually, and it is indeed true. I vividly remember that back in April, I had an insightful conversation with a US-listed company and its management team. Our primary business focus is on manufacturing mining machines. Well, yes, they will certainly share it with you and say, hey, in fact, the mining cost, if you decide to mine Bitcoin, is actually quite expensive, and you are absolutely right. Even though he might consider traveling to certain states that have lower electricity rates, the total cost to mine it would still be at least $80,000. I would actually like to ask this question once more, as I am still not entirely familiar with the specific configuration and setup of his last mining unit. Is it true that you can't talk about the United States? If you go to some more affordable places, you can't leave even $1 million behind. If it is utilized as a reference indicator for our purposes, it indeed holds some significant reference value.
Someone has discussed in detail how much it truly costs to mine Bitcoin effectively. Relatively speaking, it will be the same. That is, it is equal to the base system. Of course, because if you count recently, it has reached 70,000, so it has a certain reference value. Why? Because if you desire such a high amount of money, will anyone actually be willing to purchase this item at a lower cost price? This is one of the things that has reference value. However, this is also related to another thing, which is that the recent performance of the current mining machine companies, that is mining companies, is indeed mediocre. So you see some explanations that the rebate is broken down into 100,000. The last time it was 100,000 was around December. You can look at the stock prices of a lot of mining companies. The current stock prices are the same as before, not even back to December. One of them is that the cost of mining is getting more and more expensive now because the new 10% is getting less and less. This is one of the reasons. Recently, if you count by performance, relatively speaking, there are some mining companies in this book that have bought more or have more Bitcoin reserves. Relative to the previous performance, it will be better than a lot of mining companies whose channels may sell their stocks soon after mining and whose stock prices will perform worse relative to the previous one, but I am just very proud of myself.
I asked him, and it turns out his business has turned into pure mining. He originally made auto parts. You could never have expected that. It's because his transformation is quite successful. Well, he doesn't sell after he finishes harvesting. He just puts the stocks in a warehouse. That's good. Yes, go ahead and eat it, consume it fully, sit on it, and now you can clearly see its impressive height. Well, let's discuss the short-term factors that are influencing the market. You mentioned the recent Bitcoin conference. This time it was hosted by the vice president of JD1s, who is responsible for overseeing several key initiatives. Could you remind me of the name of the host? He gave me a keynote. Yes, it's a keynote speech. He is a Silico speaker, and his topic is innovative financial sovereignty and the future of Bitcoin. Wow, it's quite clear now. The underlying concept at play here is cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, which has gained significant attention.
If you are interested in acquiring this particular product, he possesses a substantial amount of it, as he publicly declared in 2022 that he is actively competing for hundreds of thousands of pills. Indeed, he has mentioned that the estimated value amounts to hundreds of thousands of pills, but you have already begun to assess this asset back in 2022. In fact, I firmly believe that he has been consistently buying shares all the time. He hasn't disclosed how many he currently owns, but he should be recognized as one of the most notable supporters, having clearly expressed his positive attitude.
Yes, in fact, he has always been strongly in favor of cryptocurrency as a financial innovation. However, if we consider this issue from a broader perspective, there is no doubt that the current US government should adopt a positive and supportive attitude towards cryptocurrencies, or at the very least, demonstrate an openness to understanding their potential benefits and impacts. Yes, so what exciting possibilities do we have that we can truly look forward to exploring? What do you think? For example, will you use it not only as a commodity but also as a medium of exchange or as a reserve unit? What about that?
Hey, the day you mentioned was actually Beacon Day, which took place on the 27th. Beacon Day is actually the 22nd. Oh, the 22nd. Got it. Sorry for the confusion. That was the very first day in the world when Bitcoin was truly exchanged for physical objects, and this historic event occurred in 2010.
Yes, what is the real thing? Do you remember?
It's just a pizza. It's just a pizza. 2 pizzas, but now it costs 10,000 Bitcoins. How can it be so scary? 10,000 pills. $1 billion now. In fact, it took you an impressive 15 years to grow 2 pizzas into a remarkable $1 billion. The United States has significant opportunities to act under JDVS, as it is based on an executive order that does not require new funding. This allows for considerable flexibility in how the United States can proceed with this initiative. In addition, if you discuss the current policy landscape, it is important to note that some laws have indeed been abolished previously, and now a growing number of banks have started to store cryptocurrencies, which means they are actively helping customers manage their digital assets effectively. Previously, when entrusting funds to clients, banks had to adhere to specific regulations and maintain sufficient assets to match the client's deposits, ensuring a secure financial environment. You can eat now, but there's no need for the cryptocurrency channel. If the customer's deposits are settled, our bank does not need to have the corresponding assets to balance such a risk. This particular location is now functioning as a bank, making it quite flexible in its operations.
Oh, just treat him as an asset, just like I am throwing money into it to eat.
In the past, there was a law. If a customer placed a cryptocurrency in the US, it would be treated as a liability of the bank, meaning that the bank had certain assets to keep. In fact, I think everyone used to think that the US was a country where people placed cryptocurrency in. But since the bank has this, why should we put these liabilities in? In fact, many banks were reluctant to do so before. Now that it has been officially abolished, we have gained significant flexibility and can now explore and start various new businesses. In fact, a significant number of times we observe the United States government introducing new laws or abolishing some previously existing legislation. Specifically, from the time Donald Trump took office until the present day, we have witnessed a gradual and noticeable relaxation of various regulations across multiple sectors. As for ETFs, although the United States currently only has Bitcoin and Ethereum, you can actually see the flow of many new coins which we call altcoins. It may not be limited to just Hong Kong, but you can clearly observe that the United States is gradually beginning to relax its monetary policy measures and restrictions.
Okay, so this conversation is not solely about Bitcoin. It's actually evolved into a vast and thriving cryptocurrency industry, really. Yes, wow, things have changed. In fact, some snack investors are not so easy to deal with. Well, if you want everyday, ordinary investors to fully understand Bitcoin or Ethereum, it actually takes a significant amount of time for them to do so. You want to know more about cryptocurrency, which will actually make the system more confusing. But you can see that the United States is making great progress, especially Hong Kong. That's right.
Recently, a significant development has emerged in the financial world. If you want to perform calculations related to investments, it's essential to reference the S&P 500. Indeed, this marks the first time a long-standing traditional index, which has a rich history, can be featured on Coinbase, specifically as an index that encompasses companies involved in the cryptocurrency sector. We didn't cry every day before. When can we enter? Coinbase is significant because currently 9 out of 10 ETFs in the US rely on custodians, and Coinbase acts as a key player in this space. The inclusion of such a company in the S&P 500 index signifies that the traditional financial world is increasingly recognizing and accepting the legitimacy and value of cryptocurrencies in the broader financial landscape. If it's not you, even though S&P 500 is often converted into shares, why is it such a big deal for Coinbase to join? I believe this is a formation of assets or a transformation of traditional world finance. In fact, the entry of Coinbase this time is something that must be mentioned. In fact, I have been worried all the time and I dare not worry so much.
I believe there is an emerging trend indicating that various cryptocurrency channels will gradually need to align more closely with traditional finance. You recently discussed this important situation. Indeed, you just mentioned the complexities surrounding it. The traditional financial sector must begin to accept and integrate some of these new digital assets into their frameworks. This shift is essential because if you do not adapt to these changes, you may risk falling behind in an evolving marketplace that increasingly values innovation and diversification. If some decentralized assets are to move closer to the traditional financial system, some compromises must be made, but in fact, you have lost the essence of cryptocurrency. But the situation is reversed, and now it seems that the rules of the game are changing in favor of cryptocurrency.
Indeed, it can be said that more and more participants are increasingly entering the financial world today. Wow, you are incredibly sharp and articulate in your speech, which truly impresses everyone around you.
Wow, is it really that big? In fact, the stock has been steadfastly holding on to its previous high for quite some time now, and its increase in value cannot even begin to keep pace with the dramatic rise of Bitcoin. Yes, if it appears that there is still some potential room for growth, I want to clarify that I do not specifically endorse this stock. However, we do have various methods at our disposal, in addition to actually purchasing Bitcoin, that can help us capitalize on this period, which reflects the ongoing development trend of cryptocurrency. I believe it would be beneficial to invite Chris to join the discussion regarding these strategies.
Method, hahaha. Actually, our ETF number is 3111 and we purchased Coinbase right in the middle. Everyone has bought the SHIB mentioned earlier. In fact, SHIB has rebounded from a low level and the rise is very fast.
You can see that it has really risen very fast. You look at the ROCI, but of course it is an ETF. We can't treat it like that. We can't just treat it as a stock.
Of course, it actually also includes the miners as the first crucial participants. Well, if you simply purchase a large number of mining companies, it is highly likely that you won't be able to return to the market levels seen in December. However, if you utilize exchange-traded funds, ETFs, how can you achieve that? It effectively incorporates various segments like Channel Kang B Station, HH, and all of these are included. That is the blockchain ETF. So I can't even guess. IBM has reached an impressive new high in the market. We all invested in it. Why? The reason is that IBM has long had a robust and effective solution channel since its inception, assisting numerous companies across various industries. Even the government has provided to botching solutions. They actually included all three of our cars in the agreement. And because we are talking about global investment, we just mentioned Japan's Meta plan. In fact, it just split its stock recently 10-1 because it rose too fast. It has increased 30 times in 1 year, and it also includes our three cars. So in fact, if you say that except for Bitcoin, we ourselves have only invested in our own Bitcoin futures ETF, which is 3135. Apart from that, there are actually a bunch of names that I just mentioned. It can not only diversify risks, but also maybe that many people may not just want to buy Bitcoin, but also want to buy surrounding things.
It's absolutely true that if you consume this particular item, everything will metaphorically explode, because this represents the powerful 3 or 7 waves of voices today, which can genuinely inform you about the numerous benefits of ETFs. However, I want to clarify that I am not collaborating with any advertisement. I am simply sharing the honest truth. Hey, you see, for example, we only briefly mentioned JD Wills in our discussion. Well, it is indeed also a well-rounded portfolio. If my memory serves me right, approximately 80% of the total investment is in ETFs. It appears that around 10% of that is specifically in gold ETFs. The other 3 major indices are evenly distributed across the market, namely the S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the Nasdaq. It is actually quite challenging for you to thoroughly study the various components that you hold when you invest in exchange-traded funds, ETFs, It is akin to discussing a well-known company like IBM. How can you accurately assess its current relationship with Mr. Cleary at this moment? What you might overlook is that numerous stocks are still gradually rebounding from their recent lows, indicating potential growth opportunities that may not be immediately apparent.
A new high has been reached because just today we saw the stock market turn around from the beginning of the year to a correction. Compared with the last correction, some more traditional companies did not suffer such a deep decline. So in fact, when they turned around and recovered, that is, when the global atmosphere was good, they also recovered. So you can see that we need to, in fact, often investors tend to prefer some higher risks because they may see a faster increase. But what everyone needs to remember is how to make their investment portfolio become less than the market, even when the market falls. This is very important.
I completely agree with that statement. It's primarily focused on ETFs such as those numbered 3 and 7 or possibly other related exchange-traded funds. Additionally, we have a selection of tagged ETFs that we can introduce to you in a little while for better insight. During this particular period, the upward trend is proving to be more challenging to achieve. This is largely because several investors, along with our customers, have raised concerns. They have inquired about the performance of the EDE, EDXF EE1 type ETF, likening it to a plate, which has led to some confusion. I feel like I am afraid it is very difficult to leave. In fact, we also need to spend time explaining to the channels. In fact, there is no need to be too surprised about ETFs because you will definitely get to this point. If your circulation is not high, then I'm really worried. Let me share an observation with you. Interestingly, it appears that investors in Hong Kong generally prefer not to utilize ETFs for their investments. Do you share a similar sentiment or experience?
Yes, I think the ETF thing is actually easy to revive in the United States. Basically, not only in the United States, but also in Asia. If you are an investor in Taiwan, ETFs are very acceptable to investors in the Taiwan stock market, right? Yes, right? That's right. In fact, a stock in the Taiwan stock market is like one of their ETFs. Basically, they seldom buy stocks. In other words, their stocks are theirs. Of course, many people buy TSMC locally, but apart from that, many people actually use ETFs to make their investments. In Hong Kong, many investors actually tend to prefer trading individual stocks rather than investing in mutual funds or other collective investment options. Even if we talk a little bit about the US stock market later, even if Hong Kong actually has ETFs that use a basket to help everyone buy US stocks, in fact, everyone tends to buy more individual stocks. But individual stocks will bear the risk. As you mentioned earlier, Tesla had fallen by 40% at the beginning of the year. Why is this happening to individual stocks? Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but in a falling market, ETFs can relatively diversify the risk.
I agree with this. Especially here, I would like to say something off topic. As you all know, we actually have some business in Singapore. I have contact with some Singaporean friends. Sometimes when I chat with them or gossip about something, I will definitely ask them, hey, have you bought any stocks? Nearly 95% of people report that they did not invest in stocks. Have you invested yet? 80% of people reported not investing anything. Because in fact, Singapore's social security system is quite similar to our mandatory provident fund system, and notably its contribution ratio is actually quite high compared to other countries. Investing in Singapore and Malaysia is widely recognized as quite challenging for many. Personally, I have engaged in numerous proactive investment ventures to navigate these complexities. This situation contrasts with my experience in Hong Kong, where I am hesitant to claim we have adequate security for our investments. But most of the time, we have to rely on ourselves for retirement security. If we use the money we earn to speculate in the stock market, it will be hard to tell. The reason why Hong Kong people prefer to rely on others for retirement security or future financial management needs may also be because of this. ETF may not be a very popular product in the Hong Kong market. I personally feel that it is a bit unpopular. However, at this moment, we all sincerely hope that our customers can begin to pay more attention to the significant investment value of exchange-traded funds ETFs, as they are actually very effective financial tools. For instance, as I previously mentioned, even the Vice President of the United States relies on these instruments to make informed investment decisions. Well, okay, let's talk about it. Today we are going to introduce you to ETFs and tools. In addition to 3171, are there any other ETFs worth sharing? We can look at 2814.
It's a FanPass ETF. This is a good thing. It's this one that's been popular recently. Wow, all of them are red. Hey, no, is it right?
Let's examine this more closely. It appears there's more to consider.
Yes, it's true. The red line is a scar. It's true. It's very scary because at that time it was FANG Plus and the market in Hong Kong was suspended, which means that it was not a trading day in Hong Kong. The US experienced its sharpest decline over 2 days, while Hong Kong dropped significantly right at the start, indicated by the red lines.
Hey, here's a thought. You believe that this word is something only I possess, but in reality, I truly own it myself.
Certainly. Here's the expanded version of the text. Well, this particular stock was briefly mentioned in passing, but why is that important? For Hong Kong residents, particularly those from Hong Kong, it is crucial to consider that if you invest in US stocks, you should definitely include Nvidia, Apple, and Microsoft, as all of these companies are expected to experience significant growth. Basically, FanFest is reserved for this team. As for Tesla, it is not included in the index for the time being because of its poor performance in the past. But we have to admit that Tesla's performance has been very sharp recently. The significant drop in Tesla's stock price complicates estimation of its future. Observing Elon Musk's actions is crucial. Although he recently stated his intention to return to his position and avoid political interference unless the CEO passes away, his candid comments are noteworthy. Yes, that's why I think we have talked about Tesla before. That is, Tesla is so hard to look at. I really don't know how to look at it. You notice the worms surrounding him. Specifically, you observe the noodle worms or the words of the famous celebrities nearby him. Tesla could potentially serve as an excellent investment opportunity. Estimating is difficult if it's untrue.
Hey, the central question you are really asking is this. Although you are aware that some of his innovative technologies are indeed visible to you, it's important to recognize that they are not the result of a single individual's efforts. It's not just Elon Musk who is responsible. Rather, you know that the talented team he has assembled is exceptionally skilled, and together they are genuinely leading the market. He does have a leading position in many markets. Of course, the gap has widened in recent months and quarters.
But when it comes to the stock price of the tail channel, it all depends on one person. I am really surprised. To be honest, the channel is very obvious. If you think of me as Apple, then the previous C and CEO are very sharp. But after he left, he got a new person, but the company still goes on as usual. But this is something that is very obvious. Tesla is that Elon Musk suddenly ran for office. He did not run for election. When he ran for election, he went to fire people and help the US government. It's advisable to head to the nearest location right now, as even if he returns later, he will likely play it very quickly and without much delay.
However, if you absolutely must revert to 440, it's a question that I genuinely do not have the answer to.
You have to look at it in June. He now says there will be a test in June. Yes, but he always postpones it. In fact, it is truly not surprising at all. Even if he can manage to send out 8 or 10 of them at once, you can still reasonably think of him as someone who has been involved in this particular business for a considerable amount of time. And then, at that moment, his robot was thoroughly prepared and ready to be sent out. So actually, it all makes sense. Hey sir, one of the risks is that you have to accept that they will often have deferral problems. This is also the case if you don't count Elon Musk. One of the problems with the company's own business is that many of its production lines need to be kept in operation, I think.
I share the same concerns you have expressed. Reflecting on the past, when Tesla initially introduced the Model S, it truly took the market by storm. The vehicle excelled in balancing an impressive long driving range, remarkable power, and a design that was widely regarded as a luxury car, perfectly aligning with consumers' perceptions and expectations at that time. This combination set a high standard that the competition still strives to meet today. At that time, his benchmark for luxury and performance was the iconic Benz, specifically the prestigious Mercedes S-Class. In fact, their selling prices are also at this level. They can also bear this level. They have been hiding in the market all the way. Later, some autonomous driving technologies have been the objects of imitation or followed by the market. But by 2025, the market has started to worry about the same thing. For instance, China's electric vehicle, EV supply chain, has become remarkably mature and well-developed, with numerous established channels that facilitate easy access to the rapidly evolving autonomous driving market. This market is notably competitive, attracting various players keen to gain a foothold. Consequently, companies in China are well-positioned to secure their share of this lucrative sector, leveraging their advanced infrastructure and resources in the EV arena.
This is what worries everyone. Tesla lacks a truly market-defining position. This is also one of the reasons why we can't get the fan page index, because many people say that our fan page is 2814. Yes, 2814. Well, we actually have an index that is well known to everyone. We often introduce it to you as the top 10 technology stocks in the United States. We will help you look at the market value and the profit. In fact, there is one thing we seldom mention, which is that we will help you look at the growth amount of the profit. Well, this is actually about you, Hesa. Every time you observe the performance, you appear to be worried for quite a long time. This is indeed true, and it is also one of the main reasons why he was unable to be included in the index previously, as he was unable to generate a profit. This is the reason we previously purchased Tesla shares, but now we recommend against buying them at this time. If you discuss the recent news, there are several intriguing new developments happening in various prominent companies. For instance, Google has officially announced that it will be incorporating an AI mode into its Google search feature. However, this new functionality is currently available only to American users as a temporary rollout. In fact, we have consistently relied on Google search for our information needs, making this update particularly noteworthy.
Doesn't Google search in Hong Kong work? I just want to incorporate AI now. I know. However, it seems that in recent days I've encountered an AI that I cannot search for openly, so I use a VPN to access it. Maybe it's not me. It's not me. I don't remember turning off the VPN. I haven't verified it. Well, we can verify it later. Let's verify it later. You can open your browser and use Google search. In fact, the first column is AI search. Yes, it does have some AI components, but I haven't tried it. I don't know if the AI mode he mentioned might be more at fans. That is, you can keep it in and turn it into a trap box. Is this Jasmine? Because now you can basically see that things are changing with each passing day. It's newly launched in the past 2 days. Google Suchange, actually the layout is different. After you log in, yes, if you are interested, you can try it or you can leave a message to let us know whether it is useful or not. However, Jeffrey is not particularly fond of the conversation feature as he believes that the chat box is not as advanced or effective as ChatGPT for meaningful interactions.
Yes, but there is room for improvement. There is nothing we can do about it. We have strong control over the company, so we cannot invest in ChatGPT because no one can invest in it now. If you talk about companies that are relatively close to going public, it actually includes Google.
He is at a low level, and I believe it will be hard for him to get promoted after this change. Hey, I want to point out that it's not easy to follow this trend. It's essentially about relying on luck. However, if you take a closer look at the overall picture, you will notice that everyone's stocks, including Tesla's, have seen significant increases and have been uploaded. Hey, just to let you know, Lydia is still here, and yes, Emilia is almost back to her previous high position as before.
Then Lydia unexpectedly found a date just the day before and went on to deliver an important speech. Actually, I genuinely believe that Jason is quite impressive. Yes, he truly is good at what he does. I consider him to be exceptionally sharp and clear-headed in his thinking. We often say that he stands out as the leader in the industry. He consistently leads the way in various aspects, being the first to innovate and implement new ideas. I think he particularly excels in the realm of high-end chips or advanced technology components. At first, I didn't know if it was copied too quickly or if it was saturated and he had to find another way out. Then he said he wanted to build an AI equipment manufacturing company. That's right, he has turned to a new track. We have started to develop some new things, and a research and development center will be opened in Shanghai soon. This is what we were most worried about before. The channel will not be able to supply high-end chips to China soon. In fact, there is a very large market in China itself. Absolutely.
But he is often warned by Donald Trump through his ears, hey, don't be so lazy and sell chips to China, etc. Certainly. Here's the expanded version of the original text. Well, this situation mirrors the broader market trends. For instance, if you examine the recent launch of the 1100 Xiaomi model, it reflects the market's anticipation that the company will invest a substantial $50 billion in the upcoming years, primarily focusing on developing these advanced high-end chips. You don't need to care whether he can do it or not, but at least the vision is not wrong. The investment market here is very simple. He will not tell you whether a tech company can really do it. The topic you have will reflect its stock price first. Hey, let's take a closer look at Xbox while hanging out with some friends. What exactly are we discussing with our buddies? A few of them asked me for insights on how to analyze other major US stocks like Amazon and Microsoft. To be honest, I'm not really interested in keeping up with them at all. What is it called? Meitani Kihong. Yes. Hey Tesla, I've already said that I really don't know Tesla well because there are too many similar channels and personal factors. However, I think the other 7 and 6 bears in the US stock market will still maintain their leading position in the market. Naturally, everyone is feeling concerned right now. I'm eager to hear your thoughts. We are all anxious about the exact same issue. China has developed an AI model that boasts significantly lower research and development costs, as well as reduced training expenses. This situation raises the question of whether it could pose a real threat to some of our previously popular stocks, particularly those driven by high expectations for AI, such as the stock price of Google. For instance, both Apple and Microsoft have established significant precedence factors in the rapidly evolving field of AI. But if you are in China, for example, Disney has models with relatively low training costs. Will these channels actually threaten the leadership of the United States or US stocks in AI?
In fact, when you assert that the cost of training is relatively low, it actually implies that many times when a new technology is introduced, the standard costs associated with it tend to decrease over time, leading to an increasing number of people adopting and utilizing that technology. Does the US stock market typically experience faster growth in the technology sector compared to the past? He didn't merely invent innovative technology, he consistently created groundbreaking advancements and then increasingly began to apply them. US technology stocks can progress by pursuing the development of new technologies. But if you are talking about gold diamonds, of course it means that a new DIP site model has been developed. The cost level in China is so high, I think everyone is worried that the previous Bilibili will become more expensive. However, in reality, historically, when individuals invested in US stocks, they were essentially purchasing bandwidth rather than artificial intelligence. This time around, the significant advancements in AI are the main drivers of interest. It's worth noting that during the previous surge in the metaverse, there was a temporary boost, but that enthusiasm eventually waned once the theme reached its peak. The AI channel experienced a slight dip before rising again. In fact, many times in the US stock market, as long as you have a new technology theme to keep it on an upward trend, then the value of buying US stocks, relatively speaking, is to buy channels that can create new things. This is what I mean. If you are planning AI, if you have planned it before and found some cost-effective training, and then the US stock market did fall for a while, but you can see that the market has basically digested it. Now, we are just waiting for some new technologies and new models to come out, or maybe what we are waiting for is the next new technological theme.
In this episode, we explored various aspects of the US stock market and hope to discuss it further in the future. Previously, our focus was on stocks in terms of proportion, but I believe the US stock market is a topic worthy of ongoing conversation. Do you have any questions? If you want to dominate the technology world, you can't do without US stocks. However, there is indeed a somewhat thorny point to consider. I have been pondering whether the US stock market at this moment truly reflects the prevailing market sentiment regarding the broader economic outlook. If it does not, then even the technology stocks, which are usually strong performers, are not achieving the results that were originally anticipated or expected. If that is the case, can we not consider overlooking certain stocks from the viewpoint of conventional stock indexes, specifically some large-scale stocks that are rooted in traditional economic sectors?
Actually, don't they genuinely deserve a higher valuation? If we currently lack ETFs that allow us to buy traditional US stocks, it's interesting to note that despite this limitation, when you examine the US stock market, you can clearly see that a significant amount of funds has still flowed into those stocks. Yeah, of course, they will buy technology stocks. In fact, in some traditional industries, when the funds come in, they will look for things to buy. Now, in fact, many traditional companies have performed well recently. Is Uber now viewed as a traditional service?
Wow, does Uber count? Only Hong Kong truly matters. Yes, not all of them are strictly considered tech stocks. They also include platform stocks and light asset stocks. Hey, let's be honest, if you ask me to invest in shares of a Hong Kong listed platform, I would much prefer to buy Uber instead. The reason for this situation is actually quite simple. The specific requirements imposed by your laws and regulations on them are, in fact, relatively less demanding. You might find it hard to believe, but Uber isn't as significant as it seems. Many places have strict regulations that affect its operation and availability. However, if you take a closer look at the Hong Kong listed platform stocks, including prominent companies like Meituan, it becomes evident that they are gradually evolving into entities that concentrate their workforce. This shift occurs because they must assume specific responsibilities for their employees, driven by legal requirements and regulations aimed at protecting workers' rights. This situation may not be favorable regarding their overall cost or how the market perceives and evaluates them. However, we will have the opportunity to study it once more. Let me answer your question again. Do you consider Uber a tech stock? All of them are technology stocks.
But if you talk about traditional terms, basically you look at the index, S&P 500 and Sun Yat-sen University. In fact, year to date is still rising. That's right. So it is actually the simplest. It is similar to the Hong Kong stock market. In fact, when its trend falls and you see the S&P 500 fall, it can also rise very quickly. So actually in the United States, of course, people pay more attention to technology stocks. However, in reality, most of the time, if you carefully examine the overall market atmosphere or the prevailing macroeconomic situation, you will discover that the various economic sectors and certain companies that are highly valued tend to closely rise and fall in alignment with the overall market trends.
Yes, to be completely honest, let's discuss a specific stock. To be candid, some friends recently asked me, hey, generally speaking, what is your current perspective on the US stock market? Most of us hold a relatively optimistic view of traditional stocks. Remember, my opinion is just my personal viewpoint. You can't ignore it at all, but for the core holdings, one is to use ETFs to pay attention to them, and the other is that many of your stocks actually have endow value. For example, if you can't find value, then the trend is lagging behind. For instance, take Apple. Recently, we just launched a new product from Google, among others. Cool, it's identical. But if this is the case, at least we all agree that we will have a relatively positive view of the US stock market.
At the same time, although both Apple and Google are heavily involved in the development and implementation of artificial intelligence, the stock that has seen the most significant rise due to the AI boom is Nvidia. However, it is important to note that many technology stocks have also experienced gains today, not solely because of their contributions to the AI industry. Many people are now saying that the recent discovery of certain flat models in AI is likely to trigger significant corrections in numerous technology stocks. Nvidia has the most gold diamond upgrades when reflecting on past achievements.
Yes. However, it appears that the situation primarily involves IBM. It's difficult to anticipate when they will begin paying out dividends. Therefore, this uncertainty is not solely due to Quincy. I genuinely believe that this specific ETF is a financial tool that deserves close attention and consideration for investors. Thank you so very much for being here today, Quincy. Your presence means a lot as you are here to share invaluable insights with us. I have shared quite a bit of information with you today, and I truly appreciate your support on the comment board. Additionally, thank you all for joining us in watching our show together. Your engagement is greatly valued. We kindly ask that you refrain from subscribing to our channel. Additionally, I hope everyone will make it a point to visit CLS as planned. Thank you. Attention to all friends who haven't opened an account yet, please remember to take the important step of opening one soon. In our user-friendly account, you'll have the opportunity to not only buy Hong Kong stocks and US stocks, but you can also invest in a variety of ETFs. Additionally, you can trade select cryptocurrencies. Don't miss out. Stay informed and engaged. Okay, thank you all very much. Next week is Essay's Comeback. We will invite Quincy to come when we have time. Some viewers have told us that the number of Quincy's appearances has reached a new high. Brother B really needs to invite more. As long as Gucci is willing to come more, it will be okay this time. Once you successfully create a new one, please test it out immediately to ensure functionality. Let's go ahead and schedule an appointment. That's all for now. Okay, see you next time. Have a wonderful time, everyone. Goodbye.